Welcome. My name is Angela, and I developed this platform as a way to educate others about the implications of this Russian aggression, the implications that it's going to have in our world. And I want to express why I'm personally invested in the outcome of this war. My grandfather served in World War II. I was very lucky in that he was open about his experiences, so I got to hear a lot of his stories. He teared up a lot, and so did my grandma. My grandma is British, and she was a teenager when the World War II started. I think I said that her father fought in World War I. My grandmother was the youngest, and so she and so my grandmother married my grandpa and came to the States. She had two other sisters that were older that also moved to the States. One of them was married to someone that was Scottish when she came over. The other married an American. Because we had these three immigrants, they were very, very close sisters, and I had a lot of contact with them as well. And I heard their stories. So, that's three people that lived through that in England when that was a really scary time. When I was about 19, I found a book at my mom's house. She just has a great library of stuff. And I just grabbed this book on the Romanovs and read it. And it was very, very interesting. And the culture is so very different. And it's just very different. So I began reading and studying really Eastern Europe, and I went down a rabbit hole. So I started when I was 19, and by the time I was in my late 40s, I decided I needed to develop other interests because I was reading a book, and it went into detail about how Russian diplomats felt about people that were Muslim and their approach to that and policies in 1880. And I realized I was in quite a rabbit hole. So I started doing things like martial arts, and I was hiking more and being more active because that's quite a rabbit hole of 20 years. And, it's very hard to provide that information. It's almost impossible. If you're talking to someone that has, for instance, lives in one of the Baltic states, they have a lot of experience that we can't really understand. We have to trust what they tell us. And I'm asking in this platform that you would also afford me some trust. And if you think that I'm wrong, I'm happy to explore that. I want to make a forum where we can determine the truth and be honest with each other and express real concerns. I just mean it to say that I have read a lot, and when people ask you to describe what it is, it's like trying to pack up, over 20 years of information and study. Pretty much when someone asks to explain it, you're trying to teach a 4-year-old calculus. You just can't do it. And I don't really know where to start. So based on my personal experiences with my family and with the studies that I've done, I do have a lot of great information. I've been very personally invested, and I follow a lot of people on YouTube. The community is pretty big. It's not big enough. And not all of these people get along. And they do different campaigns, and they promote different charities, and they fundraise for different things. And it's kind of confusing, and it's hard to navigate. But I do follow this, and I am on the live streams, and I am checking out all this information. And the reason I like it is that they're talking to people that have firsthand experience, which is really, when it comes to history, I think that's pretty pivotal, right? I'll give you an example, okay? I'll give you an example. So, actually, I can't. It's about a book with Dostoevsky, and I was watching a video, and what was said is not what the book was. And so I don't know if it's a movie translation, but it brings up questions for me because the translation, it changes everything, right? And it brought questions to my mind about, you know, different people do different translations for these authors, and I'd even be interested to know what other people experience in books that they've read, and how it's translated and any inconsistencies with that. I would like to combat some of the misinformation, which is really extensive. Okay. And I want to address some of the concerns. Let's talk about one of the contentions at my house, which actually we're talking about quite frequently, and I think that we're getting through it. But in my house, haven't we already given all this money to Ukraine? Why are we giving them more money? Right? All right, there's a lot of arguments over that. There's a lot of arguments. First, I want to point out that 90% of that is going into our economy, because we have all of these weapons and all of these munitions that need to be decommissioned. And I have heard this. I'm not going to say that it's true because I don't know, and I appreciate anyone that has knowledge about this, but it costs more, from my understanding, it costs more to decommission weapons or munitions than to send them to Ukraine. That's a little strange to me. So why aren't we sending them? We should just do that. So 90% of that is actually going back into our economy, because we are making new weapons for us as we're getting rid of our old weapons. So it's actually allowing us to put more into our economy and into our military to update them, which is incredibly important, because even 6 months ago, the war was being fought completely differently. So we need to be on top of that. We need to be involved so that our technology is cutting edge and that we can defend ourselves, right? And so I think it's important for us to be developing these technologies as we're watching them progress. So we want that money back into our economy. We want our technology to be updated. So, you know, that's part of it. The humanitarian aid is essential. And I mean, just being able to pay for their military, it's essential. So we'll talk more about that. But the other thing is, as far as how much money have we given? Well, after World War II, a few years after that, NATO began. And the purpose of NATO specifically, is to deter Russian aggression. Now, this goal was of such importance that there are many countries now that are part of NATO. And they follow the requirements so that they could do that, which is not small. And then, let's see, we're talking about 75 years. 75, not quite that. I think 55, maybe around 75, 70, 75. I have to look. Anyway, over the course of those years that we have been participating in NATO, we have met that requirement to spend the required percentage of our GDP on NATO and arming NATO. We have followed through with that. Other countries have not always done that, and that's been a point of contention. But even though other countries have sometimes fallen short, we as a nation have continued to do that. So we don't have a lot of people living that went through World War II anymore. We can't really consult with them the way that we would want to. But we have to validate NATO there was a reason that for all of this time, our nation felt that it was so important, so critical to participate in NATO and to develop it and to have allies. So over the course of all of those years, all of that investment, you know, and all of this work that we've done over all of this time, imagine the enormous cost. And yet we are falling short when it comes to meeting that goal. So if we had people involved that were, you know, if we still have the same people that started NATO, I think that they would be very active and vocal about their opinions. But we're not able to consult with them. But we do have a historical content of knowing that we have prioritized this as a country, and the other countries have prioritized this as one of the most critical needs that we have for each of our security, to control Russian aggression. And it is frustrating to me that generations have sacrificed and built this and spent all of this money, and we're not meeting it at the finish line. Like, we're at the 2-yard marker, and all we have to do, I mean, we have a good rusher, we just need we just need to get in there and get our touchdown. Guys, we can do this. We gotta follow through, we gotta finish to the end. And Russia, they are doing so good at convincing our media and our public that this isn't a worthy goal. I also want to state that there is a lot of assumption or speculation that Putin is not being fully informed of what's going on in his military. We're also being told in the U.S. that, oh yeah, well, you know, our Republicans are voting this way, but in reality, when you're behind closed doors, this is how they really feel. I don't trust that. They get out there on a podium and they make these statements. So I don't really care what they say behind closed doors. I care about how they're voting, and I care about the public statements that they make. And if they don't have the courage to make statements that are consistent with what they would say behind closed doors, those are not representatives that we want in our country. We want people that have integrity, that will fight for our needs. So don't play into that. Don't give them all this, you know, we want to give people an excuse to say we want to think the best of people, but we can't afford to. We can't afford to. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. I hope to see you guys more. This is a start. Hopefully this can be a thing, but if it's something you want to do, that's great. I also have some other interests in that, you know, we can be a real support to each other. So we'll see how that goes. Tomorrow I actually have an interview to help to see if I can be paired with someone that wants to learn English, that's Ukrainian. So we'll see what happens with that. That's just kind of a weird thing that was put out on Discord, but I'm going to see what happens. That would be really interesting, so I'll let you guys know how that goes. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I hope to talk to you soon.